I'm sitting next to you.
If you want, you can use my ruler.
I know, I don't get a ruler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ed Hoops. I'm the chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. We will now convene the March 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. As required by General Laws, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. The public are able to attend this meeting either in person or via the alternative public access. Members of the public may watch the meeting live on Channel 18 or watch and/or participate in the meeting hosted in Zoom. The meeting notice provides necessary instructions to join the meeting via Zoom. Please note that audio, video, and screen sharing functions will be disabled for all attendees. You may request to participate by using the raise hand function. I will start by taking a roll call for quorum. Ed Hoops is here. Tom Durkin.
Here.
Patricia Mulhern.
Yeah.
Ellie Lawrence is absent. Rick Bishop.
Present.
Paul Huggins. And David Bernstein.
Present.
The quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order. Again, this is the meeting for the Yarmouth Conservation Commission for Thursday, March 2nd, 2023. Moving right into our first order. We have an executive session scheduled. The commission is scheduling a executive session to discuss litigation related to 18 Rhodes End, Yarmouth. The commission will convene an open session and at the end of the executive session. So do I have a motion to, do I have a motion to enter into an executive session for the purposes, I've got too many, for the purpose of, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, and then to reconvene in open session at the conclusion of that executive session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ed Hoops, that's aye. Tom Durkin?
Aye.
Patricia Mulhern?
Aye.
Rick Bishop?
Aye.
Paul Huggins?
Aye.
David Bernstein?
Aye.
All right, so we are now in executive session.
There we go. Thank you.
We're starting River Street.
Yeah. This is the oil.
I didn't download them, so I'll keep it and I'll get it to you after, if that's okay.
Just one more minute.
Good.
It's the biggest crowd we've had in a long time.
Not gonna believe it's the neighborhood.
All right, everybody, thank you. We are now back into the regular open session of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission meeting. Thank you for all for being patient while we sorted through our executive session. First order of business then in open session is an emergency certification. This is Kieran Healy for BSC Group for William Hearn, 103 River Street. It's a fuel oil release remediation efforts. Kieran.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor at BSC Group. With me tonight is Mr. Hearn and also a representative from Bennett Environmental and a representative from the remedial company that's going to remove the contaminated soil. We were in here before and got a notice of intent, all the conditions from you guys to remove a portion of the building, lift a portion of the building, and reconstruct a portion of the building. The work has started, and during the construction, when one of the corners of the building was being elevated, an oil tank that was unlisted and unknown was disturbed. A hole was hit in the top of the pipe, and a small amount of oil was leaked at that time. Since then, the tank itself has been removed, and that immediate soil around that area has been removed. But there will be a lot more testing and a lot more soil to be removed as this project goes forward. And we're just looking to discuss this with you and hopefully get permission to continue on with the work that we're doing to remove any contaminated soil that's on the site. We're all here to answer any type of questions that you have about this project.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. So you're planning on just getting the emergency side of it taken care of first, and then you'll come back with a plan that shows everything that was done?
Correct, yes, I mean, just basically the soil is going to be removed around that tank to the point where it needs to be. The building is going to be in the same location, everything's going back in the same position that we had originally permitted. It's just purely the removal of that unknown tank.
Okay, all right. Any questions from the board?
No.
No, you're all good? Brittany?
No questions, but I did, emergency certification was issued on Monday. They already did excavate some soil, so we're looking for ratification and any revisions, if you want an amended order of conditions, or of any other requirements that you might want.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yes.
All right, carry on.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you.
I'm sorry, yes.
You have to vote to
Somebody
ratify.
like to make a motion to ratify the emergency order.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
He's new as chairman now. It's his first meeting as chairman.
That's why I'm here.
You always got to make sure I'm forgetting to send something down there. All right, next order of business is an announcement from the Department of Public Works, a presentation of wastewater program and updates.
Just one.
I'll just hand you this.
Okay.
This is just going to be a,
Yeah.
It's just one page.
His announcement, different.
Those are mine.
I think it's coming up later again.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jeff Colby, the Public Works Director, and we're in the process of ramping up our public outreach associated with wastewater. There's a lot of elements of that. I really appreciate you allowing me to have some time to share with your committee an overview of what's going on. I thought this was a very appropriate time since two of the items that you'll hear after me relate to an RDA and a notice of intent associated with the project. But this is just a general overview. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about the project generally. And then ultimately, we'd like to get your support for the project. I believe previously you have sent a letter out during some of the, or a letter of support was provided previously when we've gone through some of the different funding requests for design and other parts of the project. At the April 25th town meeting, we'll be looking for the construction dollars for phase 1 of the project. I'll cover that briefly in here, but that's a relatively sizable portion of the project, actually the most expensive phase of our wastewater project. That's approximately $207 million. I'll go through some of the overview elements here, but we'd like to gain your support for the project. That would be helpful. With that said,
I'll just, if you just stop, I'll just.
got a brief presentation for you tonight. Again, mostly overview, describing why we're doing this project. I'm sure Tom has kept the committee well updated. He's a valuable member of our Water Resource Advisory Committee.
These photographs, they didn't give me any credit.
So we have already had a presentation with the Economic Development Committee. We've got one coming up with the Board of Health. They're certainly discussing a number of these different elements that are associated with connection to a wastewater system. So there's definitely some very, very good discussion and questions that have been coming out through our outreach. We've done a number of public sessions this fall. We'll continue to do a few this spring, all leading up to town meeting.
That was my
Right,
photograph.
great, thank you very much. So this is the typical slide that you may have seen in some of our presentations with regards to septic systems, how they work and what the issue is. We love to show this graphic on the right that shows what the community looked like in the 1950s and then ultimately here in the 1990s and beyond become well-developed, approximately a 722% increase in population in that time. Because of that, nitrogen has caused significant issues in our coastal embayments. And here's some pictures. Some of these have been provided by different environmental groups, and some of them have been provided from our natural resource department, but you can see the algae blooms in the Bass River particularly has been an issue. There's also been some previous fish kills in previous years, so there's definitely over nutrifying of our marine environment. There's also been some discussion recently about the new Mass DEP regulations and what that means for homeowners. There's been a lot of discussion publicly in the newspaper and just amongst people. We want to set the record straight that the program that Yarmouth has identified with our wastewater program avoids individuals having to do innovative alternative systems on their private property. That's a very expensive proposition, and this wastewater centralized treatment project that Yarmouth has designed and is looking to implement avoids that for people. So we want to make sure we're very clear about that. There's also, this is an environmental project, but there are economic benefits. We want to be very clear about that. So this is something we want to identify for people, that there's been a number of studies. One that I like to highlight is in 2018, the UMass Donahue Institute indicated that there are at least $100 million of potential pent-up demand for different redevelopment projects. And certainly with the first phase of our wastewater project being along Route 28, there's good opportunities for that in that corridor. So we will have to develop land use controls, which we're currently working on. That will manage growth as well. There are DEP requirements in the state revolving fund that we do this and that we manage to certain flow numbers. So we know what the existing flows are within the town of Yarmouth, and we have approximately a 40% increase of flow that we have identified for potential redevelopment opportunities. And that's the number we're going to manage to. It's not unrestricted growth, it's managed to a certain cap. That's important from not only a growth management perspective, but also from a design perspective. We need to size the treatment plant and size the collection piping to a certain size, and those are the numbers that we have identified. And that's approximately 3.5 million gallons a day on a wastewater treatment perspective. Just a little brief, this is just a one slide. Probably just recently you'd heard that the town of Yarmouth was working with the town of Dennis and Harwich on a potential regional solution. That timing didn't quite work out, and there was some just real challenges in working together with those communities. So in August of 2021, the Board of Selectmen supported the approach where Yarmouth is going it alone, at least for these early phases. There may be opportunities for us to work together on a basis with Dennis or Barnstable, our neighbors, on future phases, but at least to get the program started because of the urgency. Developing a wastewater treatment plant at 99 Buck Island Road made a lot of sense. That is a site that's been previously looked at and is very appropriate for wastewater treatment. There's been a number of recent accomplishments, and as I mentioned before in the earlier comments, the Conservation Commission has supported many of the different design requests that we've had, but as you can see from these bullets, just in 2020 and 2021, several $1 million, approaching actually $10 million of design funds were appropriated for the collection system as well as the treatment plant, and so both elements are well underway. Continue with some recent accomplishments. In 2022, there was a wastewater infrastructure stabilization fund that was identified to help us pre-fund and provide savings, if you will, to be applied to the wastewater program in the early years before we have the users on board and the need for construction of the facility. We also have a district improvement financing program that was approved at town meeting. Notice of project change was also applied for, and we received full approval from MEPA in September of 2022. In 2023, in January, the intended use program came out. That's with the state revolving fund, and ranked Yarmouth as the #1 project. So we're in line for significant amounts of debt forgiveness as part of the program and other grants, but certainly being the #1 ranked program in the state, indicates that we have a need to move this program forward, and we have support to do so. So just a couple of brief slides with regard to the program. These colored areas are the 8-phase program for the town of Yarmouth. What is be acted on at town meeting is really just phase 1. It's that corridor along Route 28 between the Barnstable Town Line and the Dennis Town Line. But as you can see, there are roughly 2/3 of the rest of the town is also part of the program. The reason we've identified that first phase is because all the other phases will flow into that central spine or collection system. Each phase is approximately 5 years. Drilling down in a little more detail, this is the phase 1. It is a very large project, and so as a result, we've divided that into 6 different contracts. Contract 1 is the treatment plant, again over on Buck Island Road. As you can see from this map, very centrally located. From an engineering perspective, that's a great location for that. Also, the other five other contracts, a total 6, were all portions of the collection system. We're looking to phase the installation of the collection system so as to minimize impact to the extent possible. But the primary corridor along Route 28 will make up 4 of those contracts. And again, we're looking to phase that. We are looking to have contracts 2 and 3, which you have 2 of the permit requests before you tonight, to be bid out before town meeting. So we will have actual numbers for the cost of those contracts. The other ones are a little further behind in the design stages and will have to come along later, as far as bidding is concerned. So funding sources. This is a project that has a number of different funding sources, at least 10. Short-term rental tax is a big component of this. The Cape Cod Water Protection Trust is a big component of this. There are user-generated fees, there's betterments, there's a number of different items. The town has already approved the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund at a previous town meeting. That's a funding source. And then we always get asked, what are the next steps? What does this look like? When are those contracts going to be executed? What are the impacts? And as it stands today, those are the different start and end dates of the various 6 construction contracts. We are looking to have construction end date for most of those to be early in 2026 at this point. Again, as I mentioned before, a number of the collection systems are staggered, so some of them will finish, and there'll be some overlap between the contracts, but it is a fairly aggressive schedule to get the infrastructure in the ground and the project online. And with that said, that's just a brief overview of the program. I know I went through this very quickly, but I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Like I said, we'd hope that we could get a letter of support from the commission, and if you have any questions in advance of that type of thing, we're happy to answer any that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
One.
Yeah.
I think this is clearly one of the most important projects in my lifetime in Yarmouth. Jeff, we are voting for this at town meeting in the spring?
Yes, the April 25th town meeting.
Great. Thank you.
All set? Anybody else?
Just one
Yep.
question, Jeff. You
Okay.
mentioned that we're the #1 ranking in the state.
Yes,
We have to meet certain criteria to keep that #1 ranking?
we need to keep moving forward, yes. But they do weigh a lot of different elements for that ranking. They look at economic need, they look at nutrient removal types of projects rank very highly. So there's a number of different criteria, but I think there's a recognition that we don't have a wastewater system, and that having one is critical. It's not like we're adding on to a treatment facility or collection system like many communities are. We're starting from scratch. That's one of the reasons why the numbers are as large as they are, but they won't get any cheaper as we move forward. If we were to delay, it would only get more expensive.
Thank you.
I just have one question.
Paul?
Yeah, as far as the location of this, is it, I'm sorry if you've already covered this, maybe I didn't hear everything you had to say. Is this the optimal area for it in terms of the technology and the, I don't know, all the other factors involved?
Yeah, it is. Certainly the treatment location and the discharge, which is in contract one, which is the Buck Island Road site, is the optimal site for the town of Yarmouth. It's outside of our zones of protection to our wells. That's a critical area. We want to stay out of those zones. And it's also in an area that's very central to the location as far as transporting the waste and collecting the waste. You want to do that as efficiently as possible, as cost effectively as possible. We want to be very responsible in our use of electricity and utilities. So for all those reasons, this is the best location of what's shown on the screen here for all the components of phase one.
Okay, all right, and just to kind of also state the importance, Rick has brought up the importance of this project and the health of the area, the health of the Cape. I really appreciate all the effort that's being put into this. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Anybody? Brittany, did you have any other questions, comments?
No questions. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, great.
Jeff?
Thank you very much.
And would somebody like to make a motion to issue a letter of support for the project?
So moved.
Okay, there's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you bring my mouse back?
Out tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tonight, would you say?
Tonight, yes, she can do that tonight.
Did you say, did you make a motion?
I did.
All right, next order of business then is moving on to request for determination of applicability. Number one is Magdalena Lovestedt, CDM Smith Incorporated, for the Town of Yarmouth road-based proposed sewers located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, riverfront area, and the buffer zones to a bordering vegetated wetlands and coastal banks.
This is South
Okay.
Yeah. It's a big area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Judici from CDM Smith.
I'm sorry, could you say your name again?
Mike Judici, CDM Smith. Sorry.
And Magdalena Lovestedt, CDM Smith.
So, as Jeff had alluded to, we have before submitted to you the first of what would be 6 contracts that make up phase 1 of the town's collection system, wastewater program. There we go. So I think Jeff presented this figure as well, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But again, contract 1 would be the the treatment plant, and then the collection system is comprised of 5 other construction contracts, centered mostly along Route 28. The subject of tonight's 2 contracts, contract number 2, which runs along Route 28 in Old Main Street, and it's shown in yellow in the figure, and then contract 3, which runs along this portion of 28, Seaview Ave and South Shore Drive. So for the RDA, all of the pipelines associated with the contracts are in the street, with the exception of a small area of cross-country area about 150 feet long. And I'll get to that in a moment. So just a quick overview of each of the contracts. So contract 2, again, on this yellow area, it's about 4 miles of gravity sewers that range in diameter from 8-inch to 30-inch. And the reason they're so big is the main spine of the system is coming down Old Main Street, and that's going to, in the future, accept flows from future phases that are off the figure here, but were shown on the figure that Jeff presented as well. So as the system expands, as each phase is built over the years, that flow will come down along Old Main Street. There's a pumping station that's located on Long Pond Drive that will pump flow from that area up Long Pond Drive, Forest Road, Winslow Gray Road, and Buck Island to the treatment plant. So again, it's about 4.5 miles of gravity sewers, about 1.5 miles of force main from that pumping station to the treatment plant. Contract 3 is about 2 miles of gravity sewers from 8-inch to 18-inch. And again, that's going to serve this South Shore Drive area. There's a pumping station that's proposed on South Shore Drive at Pine Grove Road. It's a town-owned parcel that will pump up Seaview Avenue and eventually flow out to Route 28. As Jeff mentioned, we've been through the comprehensive wastewater management plan process with MEPA, and that has been approved. Additionally, the Cape Cod Commission has confirmed that the CWMP is in compliance with the 208 plan. This was just a quick overview figure of, again, the limits of Contract 2 that I talked about. You can see it sort of shaded in white. The streets that are going to be served by the sewers, the force main, again, comes up Forest, Winslow Gray, and Buck Island Road to the treatment plant. So that's all part of Contract 2. This is just a breakdown of more detail showing the streets. There's some side streets between Old Main Street and Route 28. This is Route 28 that curves along here. Old Main Street is the bottom sewer that runs from Route 28 to the east in that direction. Contract 3, again, a portion of it is in Route 28, South Shore Drive, and Seaview Avenue. And that's just more detailed showing what that looks like. So again, in terms of the RDA, with the exception of a small stretch of cross-country sewer that runs between Karen Way and Old Main Street, it's about 150 feet long. All of the other pipes in both contracts are within existing paved roadways. So the submittal includes the pipes in both contracts, as well as the pumping station in Contract 2, the one that's on Long Pond Drive, that's non-jurisdictional. And then the NOI that we could get to in a few minutes includes the pumping station on South Shore Drive that's in Contract 3, because that is in the floodplain. So I don't know if the intent was to just sort of go through the RDA and then move on to the...
Work for the RDA, yeah.
Right. So we can stop at that point, and happy to take any questions.
Okay. All right. Questions from the commission? Nothing?
Simple question. Your plan calls for the pump station to be at elevation 13?
Actually, 14.
Okay, looked like 13. It's the only one you called out there.
Okay.
And the South Shore Drive's at elevation 10? Looks
The
like.
existing roadway, it varies between 7 and 10
Thinking
or
about
so.
flood
Yes.
zone issues, that's all.
The flood zone is, yeah, and that's why that one is part of the NOI, and we can talk in more detail about that. Yes.
Otherwise, great.
Yep, thanks.
All right. Anybody else? Brittany?
No questions, thank you.
Anybody in the audience have any questions on this one? Anybody on Zoom? Raise your hand digitally. I see none. Unless there's any further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Dan here? Oh,
Yep.
I'm sorry, okay.
Thanks.
All right, next order of business is another request for determination. Dan Ojala, Down Cape Engineering, for Thomas J. Ruin, Trust 168 South Street, proposed freestanding garage located within land subject to coastal storm flowage. I believe there's a declaration first. From
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I happen to be a personal friend of the applicant, Tom Ruin, and I don't believe this will have any effect on my approval of this project.
You may discharge your responsibilities.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, there you go. All right, is there anybody who has any objection to that? All right, we're all good, so noted. Thank you, Dan, or thank you, Rick. If you'd like to go ahead and state your name for the record, and then
Thank you.
describe the
I
project.
am not Dan Ojala. I am Craig Ferrari, also with Down Cape Engineering.
Sorry, could you spell your last name?
Ferrari like the car, Ferrari. I've been with Down Cape since about 2013 now. So this proposal is just for a garage, primarily intended for storage. Right now, there is an existing single bay garage in this general area. The site is located outside of the 200-foot riverfront riparian area and outside of all of the other resource areas with the exception of the flood zone. So this structure will be a flood-compliant structure with flood vents and engineering, again, primarily used for storage. So we're not putting any pavement or gravel in connection to the driveway. It's going to maintain the existing lawn area much in the same way that it is now. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have on the project.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions from the board?
I do. I have one question. I noticed when we were there, there were 2 trees that were taken down. And I believe one of them was within the area that we probably should have some kind of mitigation for. Preferably have both of them, mitigation for
Okay.
both, but.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was not my knowledge that he was removing any trees in this area. But we're certainly happy to provide some mitigation. Would the board specifically recommend trees in place of that? You know, we could do 2 trees to replace the 2 that were removed.
It's funny you should say that because the other day we were at a MCC seminar, and one of the points made by the presenter was that when you take down a big tree and replace it with a small tree, it's just not enough. So it's a huge tree. I think you have pictures. So I'm hoping for more than 1 tree to mitigate for the
Okay.
2, you know, not a 1-to-1.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can certainly review that with the client, and you know, I think they'll be amenable to planting, you know, a few additional trees in to replace those.
I haven't seen that for a
Okay,
while.
anybody else? Brittany?
So it's more important.
Nope.
Anybody in the audience on this one? Anybody in Zoom have a question on this? Raise your hand digitally. I see none. In that case, unless there's any further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2?
So moved.
Second.
David, did you say second?
Oh, Tom did.
Tom, oh, sorry, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
All right, next order of business is another request for determination, not Dan Ojala, from Down Cape Engineering for Matthew Feed, 184 South Sea Avenue, Unit 10. This is a proposed cantilever deck within land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zone to a salt marsh, with no ground disturbance proposed.
Again, Craig Ferrari with Down Cape Engineering here. Matthew is also the property owner in attendance tonight. So this is a proposal just for a small deck expansion. Right now, the access to this cottage goes up the stairs to a very small deck area. There's very minimal usable space on this property. So we're just looking to expand that deck a little bit. This project has been carefully designed to cantilever out from the existing structure, and there is no ground disturbance whatsoever proposed for this project. Everything is going to tie into the existing structure and utilize the existing supports for the dwelling. And in addition, we're proposing 230 square foot of mitigation plantings, and we're also relocating the existing fire pit a little further from that salt marsh to make room for some of these mitigation plantings. So happy to hear any questions the board has.
Because you're moving the fire pit further away from the salt marsh, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any questions from the board? No? Brittany?
Yes, we would just like to know the what the mitigation plantings are that are going to be proposed and the species?
Yeah, so part of that is this is common area of a condominium form of ownership. So we're happy to discuss some plantings. You know, I had suggested some sweet fern or pasture rose, maybe some beach plum might be appropriate for the area. Certainly need some saltwater tolerant species here. So those were some of the ones that I started to look at. But we definitely need to keep in mind, you know, the salt marsh right there and provide species that will tolerate those conditions.
Okay, once you have a collection put together, just let us know, and I'd like to review it before we approve it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would suggest not sweet fern, probably not going to do well there at all.
Yeah.
All right, anybody in the audience? All right, anybody on Zoom? Raise your hand digitally. I see none. Unless somebody would like to make a motion, or sorry, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2 with the special condition that the planting palette be provided to Brittany before?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, moving on to continued notices of intent. We have one, which Thomas Young for 71 Arrowwood Road, proposed 15 by 28 and 9 by 9 deck on sonotubes in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. At long last, we have come out of our drought, and we have shown, or the applicant has shown, that the area is not a riverfront area. And so we are ready to move forward with the, unless you have any further questions, if anybody has any questions for it, I should say, is
He is.
Thomas in? Hi,
know.
Tom? Tom, can you hear us?
He's muted.
You're muted.
Muted. Yeah.
Did he unmute himself? or do we-
Tom, can you unmute yourself? If he's doing this by phone,
He is at work.
I feel sorry for him. I've been here trying to do that too. Where's the mute?
He can't unmute him up back here.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think we can. Right, I mean, he can't unmute.
No, I don't think so.
There,
Running it again.
Hey, can you hear me?
there we go, we can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. So I don't know if you heard the intro here, but we do understand that you've gone through the we've come out of the drought status. We are now back in normal precipitation, and that you've done your due diligence in reporting that the area the ditches did not contain water, and therefore were not riverfront area. Is there anything else you'd like to add to for the commission?
I have nothing else to add. Hopefully we can move forward.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions from the board? We did hear this once before, or we had started hearing it. Okay. Brittany, anything?
No questions.
All right. Anybody in the audience have any questions on this one? This is for 71 Arrowwood. No. Oh, sorry, Arrowhead.
Oh,
Road.
sorry, Ed. We do have a DEP number. It came in at 4:30. It's 0832381.
All right, so let the record reflect that we did receive the DEP file number. It's for SE 83-2381 for 71 Arrowhead Road. Is there any discussion from Zoom? Raise your hand digitally if so. I see none. So unless there's any further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion to accept, to accept the project with special conditions? Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. I was going to say things are going so well, but I better not say anything because that's the way it doesn't work out. All right, our next order of business are new notices of intent. The first one is for SE 83-2379 Magdalena Lofstad CDM Smith Incorporated for the town of Yarmouth, 0 Pine Grove Road. Proposed construction of a pump station that is part of the proposed wastewater collection and conveyance system in land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Judici, CDM Smith again. So as I indicated before, the one pumping station down on South Shore Drive in Contract 3 is within the floodplain area. So this is on a town-owned parcel on South Shore Drive at Pine Grove Road. It's a wooded area. This is a limited project because it's a public utility, and as you indicated, it is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The existing grade is right around elevation between 7 and 8 at the location of the pumping station. In order to elevate the critical components of the pumping station above 3 feet above the floodplain, we are adding some fill to the area to put the first floor of the pumping station up at elevation 14, which would be 3 feet above the floodplain elevation of 11. There's approximately 12,200 square feet of permanent alteration. Of that, just over 2,500 square feet would be impervious. We are putting, as indicated, a control building to house the electrical equipment for the pumping station, as well as an access driveway. And the remaining 6,700 feet would be seeded and planted once we're done. You want to walk through the stormwater?
Sure. So as Mike mentioned, the site will be mounted,
Move it closer to you.
Bring it close.
oh, yeah, to be closer like this. So we're mounting the site to about elevation 13. And the BMPs will basically consist of gravel infiltration trenches around the new structures and on both sides of the driveway. And then there will be a bioretention basin at the alongside the access road or the driveway into the site. And that is to provide water quality and groundwater recharge. And because it's in a coastal area, we're not subject to the pre and post attenuation. But there will still be some attenuation in that bioretention, and all of the stormwater will actually remain on site. So there will be no stormwater that goes onto South Shore Drive. Is there climate risk? Do you want to do that section, or but that's just about the elevating? We're elevating 3 feet above the effective 100-year floodplain, so that will be all critical infrastructure, and then the first floor elevation of the control building. And so for mitigation measures, we have stake compost logs and any dewatering. We'll use settling basins, and we also talked about any the area will be seeded and stabilized upon completion of the work. And I think the next one is the compliance with the performance standards. The Mass Wetlands Protection Act has no performance standards for work in land subject to coastal storm flowage, and we are in compliance with the local bylaw since there's not a major estuary within 300 feet of that site on South Shore Drive.
Okay, all right, thank you. Is there questions from the board?
Nope.
All set?
Good. We're good.
Brittany, any comments?
Yes, I do have one. Just native plantings would be preferred to be used in jurisdictional areas. The plantings you propose include an exotic juniper and a potentially invasive grass. If those could be replaced with plants from the Barnstable County native plant list, that would be greatly appreciated and maybe a condition.
Do that as the condition, sure. All right, are you all set?
Yep, that is
Okay.
all.
Anybody else in the audience on this one? Anybody on Zoom? Raise your hand digitally. All right, if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions, including native plantings in jurisdictional areas?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next order of business is another notice of intent. Craig Ferrari, right? Down Cape Engineering for Kaya Sinar, 4 Television Lane, proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling and a new Title V septic system within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good catch, Pat.
Yes, Craig Ferrari with Down Cape Engineering here. We are working on the raise and replace of an existing single-family dwelling. This septic system will be a vast improvement over the existing underground system that's slightly mounted in the back. Due to the 5-foot separation requirement here, we are proposing a retaining wall with a small amount of fill. I believe I calculated that to be roughly 250 cubic yards, and that's mainly for the septic system components in the rear yard. We've tried to design these retaining walls to contain the septic system and provide a little bit of a rear yard for these clients. It will be a pressure dose style septic system, so that's going to spread that effluent out over the course of the day rather than just when the septic is used, primarily in the morning and the night. So that's a great environmental benefit to this. You know, it is going to be an elevated structure due to the flood zone. We're in the AE elevation flood zone, so we are designing our top of foundation 1 foot above that to meet the Mass Building Code amendments. Everything below that elevation is going to be storage only, so all of the main living floors will be elevated up out of the flood zone. Again, vast improvement over the existing house, which is currently non-compliant. So happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Brittany,
No questions.
is there anybody in the audience have any questions on this one? Anybody on Zoom have any questions? Raise your hand digitally. I see none. Is there further discussion? Would somebody like to make a motion for to approve with special conditions?
So moved, David.
Is there a second? Pat, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you.
we do have a DEP number for that project as well. It was issued
I'm sorry.
today.
Okay, what was it?
It's SE 832380.
Straightforward.
2380. All right. Just to let the record reflect, then that for 4 Television Lane, the DEP file number assigned to that is SE 83-2380. All right. Next order of business, we're moving into enforcement. The first order is for Great Island Homeowners Association, 0 Great Island Road. It's unpermitted fill deposited on a coastal dune, coastal beach, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And before we get to you, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany and let her explain what's going on, and then we'll turn it over to the commission and see if they have any questions.
Okay. As most people know, late in December, there was a big storm event coming from the southeast. It led to significant erosion on Great Island Road and the parcel closest to the beach. After the fact of this storm, a homeowner took it upon themselves to deposit a significant amount of fill onto this dune area, in the process smothering some native vegetation. Sorry, gotta get back to the, but we met on site. I met on site with the homeowners association with several of the commissioners to discuss what had gone on, and we brought them here to discuss the events. And we do know the people who performed the work were Childs, and they were willing to give us the information of the amount of fill provided, deposited on site, including rocks. And I will show you some photos once I get to the right.
I'm sorry, Brittany, did you
Parcel.
say they did or did not?
They did provide information. 7.1. And when we were on site, we did discuss the issues about having the fill not be matching the sediment grain size to the beach, in addition to obviously it being an unpermitted activity. You can see the dune with the deposited sand that doesn't match the beach color, several feet over the existing grade of the dune.
And this was in the same area that was proposed before? Was that?
It was not. It's in an area prior to the original proposed project
Okay.
along the road.
Further east?
Further east, yes.
Did you say the rocks were added? also?
There were rocks in the invoice too. We were unsure when we were on the site visit, but it was confirmed that they also brought in rocks.
And how much was deposited then in total?
Let's make sure. I think it was 530 tons of sand, and I don't know if it was an additional 40 yards, but they're in two separate invoices. One has 530 tons, and the other one has 40 yards.
Anybody do a quick conversion there on yards?
No.
Probably,
So we're talking about 100 total, 100 yards total?
Yeah.
That seem reasonable?
a good 12 dump truck loads. So,
And so we want to move forward and address the issue with the most minimal disturbance possible while also remedying the situation. So I would imagine that removal of the fill is in order, but we have to be critical with how we're going to bring it back.
Well, and you're also running up against the gun now because you're about to enter onto Mass Natural Heritage Endangered Species closure times. But I think it should certainly be removed.
There's a concern, would removal of the sand make things worse on what's underneath it? I mean, I'm not sure what would happen. That's the
That's what we're
question.
here to decide, yeah. It's, the incompatible fill is definitely a negative to have on site. I think we should remove it. There's a significant amount of vegetation that was damaged in the process. Revegetating the dune would be in order.
That would have to, yeah, that would definitely have to be, not only would we remove it, but they would have to restore anything that was damaged either because of the fill or because of the removal of the fill.
Okay.
it's very complicated.
Yeah.
A question? Yeah, are we going to get an explanation as to why this was done? It was just, he said something about a storm.
I don't know why it was done.
It was just, but I mean, is it arbitrary that somebody decided they have to dump 530 tons of sand on the beach?
I imagine
Without-
they're trying to protect the road, but you guys may offer.
So
Just-
maybe here's where we should call you. So if you would identify your names, names for the record, and then if you want to, if one of you wants to speak to that question.
My name is Buff Chase, and I'm a long-term resident of Great Island.
Sorry, can you say your first name again?
Buff,
Bob?
B-U-F-F, Chase, C-H-A-C-E.
Okay.
And I have been responsible for many years on Great Island. I was the head of the company that first subdivided Great Island from one lot into approximately 40 lots. We kept 80% of the land in conservation. And so I'm also a trustee of the Great Island Realty Trust, which owns the owns the fee simple of the common area, which is about, I think, 380 acres. The area just adjacent to this is under conservation easement with the trustees of reservation, and which was an agreement that I made in 1987. I was the one that was responsible for this fill. I did it on the basis of public safety, that the road, if the road was just about to be washed away, and I made the decision to move quickly on this, which is similar to a decision we made in Hurricane Bob and previous storms when the road was actually relocated. If some of Brittany's, I haven't met Brittany, nice to meet you, but if you looked on the beach, you could see where there were old telephone poles and asphalt from a previous road. And so we moved the road inland over, I'm not exactly sure which year it was, but 20 plus years ago. And we will ultimately, when we talk about solutions, which is what at some point we should talk about, is it moving the road again? So I made the decision quickly to protect the road because the water was rising. It was called Bomb Cyclone Elliott was the name of the storm that occurred. We seem to hear more about bomb cyclones these days than we used to hear about them. But it was a dramatic event, and we have some elderly people on the island, and I felt from a public safety point of view that we needed to be able to get an ambulance or a fire truck or a police car there. And so it's my bad, and I mea culpa, I apologize for that. But sometimes you have to make decisions quickly, and I made that decision. You know, we have been conservation-oriented people for many years, and will continue to be so. So I don't know if it's appropriate to suggest another alternative. The other alternative would be to do plantings on this. I didn't, Mr. Childs, who responded, the first time he responded, the sand was of a white quality that was further down. He came in two different times. The first time he brought fill, it was appropriate, or you know, it was of the same color and granular size that was the one on the beach. I was not there for the second time, and apparently wasn't able to get the same kind of sand. So that was, he brought this other type of sand. What I would, if it's not too, don't mean to be presumptuous at all, but you know, we would like to work with the commission here to talk about solutions. This is obviously a very important road. There are over 40 different homes out here. It provides, you know, significant part of the assessed value of the town. The previous presentation about the sewer showed Great Island sticking out there in a very vulnerable way. So the road has been important for us and important for value, and so I made a decision that I felt had to be made. It wasn't with the approval of the Great Island Homeowners Association, So now we need to do something, but we also, I mean, as you know, just in the last week or so, if you look at the high tide lines, they're right up to this dune. And the dune is, even though Brittany's photographs show the dune, the road is like 15 feet beyond the dune. For those of you who've been there, you probably saw that. So it was really a defensive move that we can talk about. Obviously, but I'm hoping we can talk about the longer-term solutions to moving the road.
Well,
Sorry.
thank you for your
Went on
candor.
too long.
Your candor first on the whole thing. Just so you understand, so you as a homeowner or even as a board member of Great Island Association don't have the authority to make the decision as to whether or not something is an emergency public safety issue. The only people who can do that would be fire chief or police chief. You know, I understand your dilemma that you have a single road out to a very fragile area. But again, I think you certainly have to understand that there was, and you would certainly know that there was some sort of conservation permitting that you would have to do, obviously because you've applied before for things.
Mr. Hoops, can I just make a comment?
Sure.
So I wanted to be clear that I am not on the Great Island Homeowners Association board. I'm a trustee of the.
Sorry, I misspoke.
I just wanted,
Thank-
because,
thank-
so it was unauthorized by the.
Okay, thank you for, yeah, I misspoke. That's my
Oh, no.
my mistake. But thank you for clarifying that. But either way, you know, you obviously just you can't go through with just single-handedly, unilaterally depositing a rather large amount of sand on the dune and beach area. I'm a little disturbed by Childs that they have done so without apparently consulting or looking into anything, and I think we need to at least have a letter or a conversation with them to that same meaning. But I mean, in the long run, and I'm not here to discuss options going forward in terms of a long-term solution, because that's not something that we should do here under enforcement. But I mean, I think everybody's going to say the same thing. You need to not only move the road, but you probably need to elevate the road as well. And that's going to be some significant engineering to do that. But as it relates to the conditions that we have right now, I would still assume that I think the best thing to do would be to remove everything and restore any damage to the dune and beach area. That would be my recommendation.
Oops, can I comment on that? Just as the point is that the dune was actually removed by the storm, so there is no dune there. So if we removed what Mr. Childs put there, there would be nothing between, it would be on the beach. The road would be on the beach.
But it's overwash, right? I mean, it would have been considered overwash area, which was that's all part of a dune. It's part of the resource area. It would be called a dune. The dune area is part of the resource area. So that overwash is part of that's under a naturally functioning dune system. There are overwashes, so you have the hills of the dunes, but there are also runnels and things in between the dunes that are part of the dune system as well. And that overwash is actually a significant wildlife habitat for other types of wildlife. So that's.
Well, I was there on the day of the storm, and there was no difference. If you went up the beach to the road, there was no there was no height. There was no 6 inches, a foot, or whatever. It was just straight, and the road was full of sand from so
That's exactly. I mean, that's what a dune is supposed to do. The dunes are not supposed to stay static. They're supposed to move around. And
I understand that.
Unfortunately, when you have a road there, that's oftentimes the road gets covered. That's part of it.
Well, but it also could be, well, like the previous road that I mentioned before, which you can see remnants of, it ultimately gets washed away. So that's what we're trying to prevent until the time that, there could be a engineered road.
Yeah, look at that, we have an engineered road and an engineered dune, that's a different thing.
Right.
You know, and that's not accomplished by just dumping 530 tons of sand willy-nilly. That's my opinion, is all I'm gonna say. Tom?
Do I understand it properly that if that sand that's been placed there is removed, then the road is in imminent danger, and the residents of Great Island are therefore also in imminent danger of,
Not having access to
Yeah.
their homes, yes.
that, and I would hesitate to demand that the road be placed in that position. Well, we could certainly request that the fire chief or police chief investigate the situation and perhaps make a suggestion.
Well, I think, I mean, that's for like an emergency certification that you would require that, but anyhow, David?
I'm a little bothered by the assumption that if we had the sand taken away, that we would be back to a flat surface. Because we were out there before the storm when you had it, and I don't remember it being flat then.
Mr. Bernstein, when I spoke, I was talking about sections of the dune. There's a nest, a pole there, you may have seen it, with a nest on top of it. If you go further on the island, on the left was where the dune was blown out. The area to the east or north of that was, there was a dune left, but it was like this wide. That part didn't go through to the road. It was just, there's kind of two main parts that were affected. And the one further on the island was the one where the road was filled with sand and the water was up there. So you're right, it wasn't every place, it was just a part.
Thank you.
Yeah, just so I understand a little bit more. So you talked about this in terms of having to do this because you were concerned about the road being washed out in the storm and people being stranded out on Great Island and so on. But the more I listen, it doesn't sound like putting plywood on the windows because the hurricane is coming. It sounds like did the storm already occur, and then you asked for some protection to be placed there?
Yes, sir.
And so, in a way, it begs the question for me in terms of this is an ongoing issue, and it was long before the storm came or anything like that. And I know that there's been some discussion, I think, of some of the things that could mitigate all of this. But it's kind of surprising that, maybe as an emotional response almost, you said, okay, let's put some sand there and let's protect this thing without any thinking about the Conservation Commission or about the fire department or whatever. And so, I understand the fact, I think like Tom, that you're trying to protect something. And I also agree that, okay, now what's the solution? And if you take away the sand, then it exposes it in the same way to that same danger that is being discussed? Or does it kind of erase the problem and then bring it back to the stage where now we're still talking about, okay, what really has to happen to solve this problem, raise the road and so on? So, I understand the situation, but it seems to me that maybe something could be done to even utilize this sand in such a way that it could offer some temporary, unless I'm wrong about this in terms of the ecology of the whole place, to offer some temporary protection and kind of security on the part of the residents, and continue to move forward with discussions of what's really going to be done. Is that too much to ask? Is it too much to expect? You know, because I just don't know.
I think I would be a little unwilling to allow the unpermitted fill to remain, as it is not compatible with the beach and can definitely have a negative impact on our endangered species habitat.
So you would say the best solution is to just get rid of this and then go back to the drawing board, so to speak?
The best solution is still up for debate, but a solution would be to eliminate the unpermitted sand, perhaps file an NOI for a, grain size analysis to be done,
Yep.
and work up new plans to bring in a dune, an artificial dune at that point, and plant it out. I don't know if that is the best way, but that would be a way.
Are there any temporary types of things that can be done while all this is going? You talk about an artificial dune or whatever. What else can be done to kind of protect that road while all of this kind of is going on?
Yeah.
Good question,
what
I'm
is
not
that?
sure.
Is there something like that?
Yes, please. This is obviously a very complex, dynamic part of the island. And I consider the idea of bringing in an excavator and using the excavator to remove that improperly added material to do more damage. And I've given this some great thought. Some time ago, your organization came before us to get permission to add 77,000 cubic yards of material to the shoreline, where in fact I think most would agree that the real solution is to relocate the road, not to put a Band-Aid on it. I'm of the belief that we would probably do more damage to bring excavators in there and heavy equipment to remove the fair amount of material that was deposited inappropriately in that location. But I voted against that Band-Aid, if you will, and I think that your community should think about solving the problem to the highest level and come back before us. And that's my opinion on this.
Okay.
So there's nothing short-term that could be done, unless you're saying it would do more damage to take that away.
That's my belief.
That
Paul.
represents possibly some sort of short-term protection and move on with the idea of a permanent solution.
Until the next big storm.
Well, I know, that's always the thing.
Because, in reality, the next big storm, which could occur next week, could take all of that sand and
Exactly.
Yeah.
take it all away. And then what are we going to do? Tell them to dump another 500 tons of sand on the beach?
Well, the thing is, if anybody had come before us and asked if they could dump 500 tons of sand on the beach, that wouldn't have been approved. So if that does happen,
I think we would have asked them to do a plan.
Yeah.
We would have asked them to put some engineering plans together for that.
Okay.
And again, it's not something it's not like we just say no just to say no.
Right.
We're saying no, let's do it the way it should be done, so that we have some sort of idea of what's going on, what's getting placed, and how is it going to be used to the long-term advantage of maintaining the resource and providing for the road safety and all that sort of thing.
right. And how long has this road been threatened?
Since the day it went in.
All right, so it's been a long-term thing,
Yeah.
and so, it's too bad it's taken this long.
Yep. David?
I understand what Rick is saying, and I agree. I'm just bothered by the fact we're talking about the road, but we're not talking about the endangered species that are there and how it's going to be affected by
I'm sorry, you didn't hear that.
the endangered species or any other
Yeah.
species that would normally, their lives are disrupted. And I think we're forgetting that that's part of what our mission is as a Conservation Commission is. I understand these people need to get in and out of, but we also have to consider that too.
Of course.
Has anybody brought natural heritage into discussion with this
No, not yet.
and to see what they,
I think that would be a good idea.
because I
Yeah.
would certainly, I'm willing to let it go for another 2 weeks if we have them contact Natural Heritage, and if Natural Heritage sits there and tells me, like, hey, we don't have any issues with it, then I guess I'd go along with them. I don't know if Natural Heritage is gonna say that. That's my only, but I sense that the board, most of the board would like to, but you could either listen to what Natural Heritage has to say, consult them, or you can go ahead and just issue the enforcement order as you see fit. But then somebody needs to just craft what they want to say in the enforcement order. And we can vote on that, or you can do a combination of both.
It would be good to get national heritage in, especially at the timing. I mean, the birds are coming in and another.
Yeah, we're very close to bird
And that's,
arrival time.
you know, a magical spot for them, that island of yours,
That's beautiful.
for the birds.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out, I meant to mention this before, but I failed to, which was in 1989 and 1990, we did a beach renourishment program of dredging sand from offshore that really provided sand and everything to enhance the dunes. It lasted 30-plus years, right? And numerous big storms. So that's in addition to moving the road, another alternative would be to try and get renew that permit. Ms. Mulhern was talking about the birds. Yeah, one of the things that's been the outcome of that sand moving, this is on the Barnstable side, where the channel comes in, is Egg Island, which was a famous rookery in Lewis Bay. That, you know, as you know, Yarmouth and the town line goes through there, but Egg Island was in Yarmouth, and because of the movement of that sand that came through the beach renourishment program, the Egg Island is now up and become a rookery again. So there are ways of, you know, bringing sand offshore, and that hasn't been pursued. But I think somebody in one of the last meetings, maybe it was you, that.
No, I did. I asked that question initially.
Yeah. So I think that what I would like the board.
But you don't have any current permits for that.
No,
right?
no, the permit ran out.
I'm just gonna give you the reality on that, is that, you know, you can certainly go that route, but you're probably looking at a 3-year process, I would think, at minimum.
Right.
In order to get, if you could get a federal permit to do that.
Right. Well, I don't
That's
think
not
it's
so
a federal
short-term.
permit. I don't think it's a federal permit, but.
Yeah, it's the Army Corps of Engineers, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, we can show you the permit that we had before. But my point is that if you could give us some time, basically, to continue to protect the road with the sand that's there, and then in that time frame explore the relocation of the road, and to see whether this permit, there would be support to do that same kind of activity 30 years later. Then we could come back and report to you, or work with Brittany to pursue that, and then there'd be a choice.
I like that.
Collectively make.
I like that.
I don't know, it's just a thought.
Should we still require, if we go that route, require replanting on top of the existing sand?
I think a MESA review should be required as part of the enforcement order.
I'm sorry, what review?
With MESA, the Endangered Species Act. Any work needs to be reviewed by them. If it's not part of a notice of intent, it has to be reviewed alone. And I think that should be a requirement. It's important to know what they have to say. And we can use that to guide our further action with the enforcement, but I think that should be a leading factor.
Brittany, can that happen relatively quickly? Would we hear from them?
You're gonna be up against
It
the gun.
depends, yeah.
Yeah, I
think it's an up to 30-day process.
To be honest with you, I'll tell you that I have run into, in my day job, I ran into doing something very similar to this, and I did manage to get them to give an opinion in just a little under 2 weeks. So there's always that possibility if we make it, I mean, I think if we make the case that this is an extremely important dynamic thing, I think they understand that we are dealing with plover issues that are potential plover issues, and that
Yeah.
if we couch it that way, I think we can certainly help. But I think Great Island should be doing the one who should be actually
Filing.
leading the request for that, not us. But we should certainly be willing to give a
Push it
call and
along.
let them know, and it's like and impress upon them the reason. So that seem what you want to do? You want to do with an enforcement order for now, with requiring MISA review under natural heritage
Yeah,
endangered species.
give us more information, and we can make an
And then
informed decision.
reconvene after that decision is rendered. And so leave everything as it is right now.
Yes.
And you will continue to explore.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, well, I'm not going to say anything more about it right now. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue an enforcement order, at least on a the first enforcement order, requesting that the applicant contact Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program and request a formal review of the unpermitted sand deposition, and that they should contact Natural Heritage within
Tomorrow.
24 hours is what I would say. I mean, I would say by close of business tomorrow. Okay, you understand what you need to do, who you need to contact? It's Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program in Westboro, Massachusetts.
They could help us with that.
I'll talk to Brittany about
Yeah,
it.
could you just, Greg will.
Yes, I'll send you an email.
Excuse me, I just wanted, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Craig Fleming. I'm actually the general manager for Great Island Homeowners Association. I had the opportunity to meet with some of you on the 10th, where we reviewed the property, but just wanted to put a face with a name and let you know that I'm here to work with you.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Which could be under different circumstances, but, all right. So do I have a motion? I have a motion. Is there a second?
I don't think that anybody moved it yet.
Oh, is
So
there?
moved.
So moved. Second?
Second, Paul.
Thank you. Is there all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, so by the close of business tomorrow, make sure you contact Natural Heritage and let them know what's going on, and have them contact Brittany for any further information, and go from there, okay? And the idea is that we'll hopefully be back within 2 weeks, or at our next meeting, with some sort of decision from them. Okay? All right. Our next order of business is another enforcement action for Tim and Claudia Norton, 13 Webster, this is West Yarmouth. It's an unpermitted installation of hardscape vegetation removal and regrading in land subject to coastal storm flowage and riverfront.
That's true, that's true.
So settle in there, hold on for just a few minutes. We're going to get Brittany to go ahead and give us the background of what's going on, and then we'll go to questions from the board to you, okay?
Great. So 13 Webster is the address here. I was contacted about some regrading and vegetation removal in an area that is known to be floodplain and partially located within the riverfront area. And I've had several discussions with the homeowner about the activity there, and it involved a septic system upgrade and dealing with stormwater management in the yard. And we met on site with some commissioners, and we walked it, and I'll show you some photos of the area that used to be. So here's the yard. The riverfront area is still requires surveying. It's likely a portion of the yard closest to the right side of the screen.
We're talking inner or outer riparian?
Outer.
This is all outer?
Outer
Everything
riparian.
occurred in outer? Okay.
Yes. Here's just the regrading and hardscape installation on the lot. A portion is still exposed. And so an enforcement order was issued to the homeowner, just requiring that an after-the-fact notice of intent would be required to be filed for the regrading in the floodplain and the removal of vegetation in the riverfront area. We have had several comments from abutters about this issue, but I think we summed it up.
Okay, I'm good with that. Any questions from the commission? For Brittany?
Can we have his presentation first?
All right, would you like to introduce yourself? Just state your name for the record.
Yes, I'm Tim Norton. My wife Claudia is the owner of record of the house, and she couldn't be here. But since we bought
Okay.
it together, I felt I could be
All right, and
represented.
does the commission have any questions for the homeowner? Did you want to say anything about what you were trying to do or why you were doing it?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the show of support of my neighbors. If possible, do you have, I submitted, just,
Yes, which
instead of going through a lot of it, I think it'd be relevant just to show the, maybe one or two. The
plan, the photos.
the septic plan is
This
yeah,
one?
that's, which you won't be able to see very much there, but
Right.
that's probably pretty good. So just a little background, because I feel it is relevant. My wife and I bought the house around right before, at the beginning of the COVID period, so it was a good price, and I'm glad we did, because we probably couldn't afford it now. And it's, the house is, originally, I guess the notice had said something about raising, but no, we've kept the 1930s style Cape style house, 1,000-square-foot house as is, but it did need a septic system. We bought it with the understanding, of course, that it had failed Title V, so we had engaged for a septic design, and this is basically what was submitted. The copy that I had, I will say, does not have the stamp, but it's in your hands anyways. But there was a lot of nice detail that went into this layout, and you can see, for instance, the two trees that were left in there and the contour lines, which don't show up here. But I mean, the point of all of that is that the plan was to follow the original contour of the property. There's a little bit of contour change that had to be done for the new septic system that's up in the upper, I guess, the top portion of that layout. You can see that in red. So the septic system, of course, design was submitted here and accepted, and then we embarked on the installation, which was done. Unfortunately, part of what was missed by everybody was the issue of stormwater drainage, which did become a problem immediately. So I had embarked on try to fix that problem. Based on my experience and background, I felt I was well suited, probably the best suited, and I've created a few percolation fields and whale fields to deal with the storm drainage. Because if you can go to the next, please. The next one that looks like that, there's one that shows the flow. No, maybe it didn't show up. Okay. There were two plan layouts, and one showed there were two plans.
Okay, and this is the second one.
Give that one moment to come up here. Okay, that doesn't show the drawings. Okay, so anyways, skip that. The point I was trying to make was that there's a walkout basement on the backside of the house that's been there for 75 years. So the contour of the land swept back to the backside of the house. Never had a water problem until the septic system went in. Immediately saw the first large rainfall flooded that whole area, as I think you folks probably commented when you were in the backyard looking around. So I dealt with that by terracing a few of the areas and creating these, what's called the percolation field. And the water was allowed to, and I studied that for a year, more than a year, and watched the flow of water. And that's what those fields are right there. Those are percolation fields. I also put a drain system from the, right outside the basement door that carries out about 30 feet to the backyard to a French drain setup. So that solved the problem, because I've been watching that for more than a year in all the rainstorms, and it's worked quite well. So that terraced and kind of pea stone, it's larger than pea stone. Pea stone would be a little bit smaller, maybe number 3. Gravel acts as a percolation field. And that wasn't just because I didn't want grass there, for instance. And it was actually put in there with intent. And that's what we ended up with. Now, because everything in that yard follows the surveyed plot plan, the survey plan, and the contour lines, that I felt like everything was within reason for me to do. And I certainly will listen to and accept the fact that maybe I was wrong, okay? So that's obviously why I'm here. So maybe I should have submitted something. But that's how I wanted everybody to understand. That's how I ended up where we are. For instance, that patio area, that is on top of the old septic box. So when they came in and they crushed and they filled and they brought in, and they basically ended up being a flat, sandy area. And then to the left, where you see the walkway going down, that follows the original contour, as I mentioned, has been there for, the house is from 1935, it's been there forever. And that follows that contour right down, there you go. So you can see that back garage door. They actually called it a garage door when we bought the house, and that's a walkout basement, if you will. And so that's all original. I mean, that's all the original contour. The stuff to the left, where it's not finished yet, that's on top of the new septic system. So that's where this project stopped. So that's where we are today. And we're not doing anything until we get this, I can come into compliance, or, we can, with whatever issue. I've never had a problem with Conservation Committee, so I'm kind of new to this. I have a lot of project experience in areas that have huge conservation concerns. So I've felt like I've always, abided by rules and requirements. Just for background, I'm the director of the submillimeter array in Hawaii on Mauna Kea, and that, you talk about a conservation issue or concerns, they have serious concerns there, and I'm always dealing with it. And that right there is out at the street, right?
Yeah. Going through.
And then there's more gravel, and that's that a plant would go into that circle, but would be a percolation swale, if you will.
All right. Well, I mean, I gotta tell you, I have never seen so much hardscape in all my years of conservation. I've never seen that much.
Thank you.
And I've been on some really big properties in my lifetime here, but so I mean, again, it's land subject to coastal storm flowage, and it's outer riparian. If this were inner riparian, you'd be in a whole heck of a lot more trouble, is all I'd say.
So I think the outer riparian line is around here. So there were woods here. It was forested, just so you know.
I like it.
So I think what you said, you've already issued the
I did. Just requiring an after the fact filing by a certain deadline. I think it was April.
Well, wait.
Yeah, I would support that. I think that's just, I don't know if there's anything else to say about it. I think you need to file the after the fact notice of intent and let it, let everybody read a plan and see a plan that we can read and make decisions on.
I had sent a supplemental attachment that just described that drainage pit more, since I heard that it was an issue. I mean, obviously.
When you should include that in the notice of intent application, by all means.
Yeah, I hadn't.
Until May 18th. I gave him until May 18th.
May 18th.
Do you think that is a sufficient amount of time? Too long?
Any engineers working for you right now?
No, and I do extensive travel, unfortunately.
Let's make a hard
Yeah.
effort to do that.
Yeah.
And if it gets to be the 1st of May and you're still having issues, give Brittany a call and let her know what the problems are and what you're hearing from engineers, that sort of thing, as to, in terms of time frame. But make sure you do that. Don't wait until May 15th. What did you say, 15th? May 18th. Don't wait until May 18th and say, "Oh, I can't do it," because that's not going to fly well with anybody on the board here. Okay.
No, I don't intend to. So,
So get to work on the notice of intent as quickly as you can.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Who did the work for you?
all that work was done by a landscape company out of Chatham. You want the name of them?
Well,
I'd have to look it up on my phone.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we
They're
definitely
all,
want to.
they're local people. Same with the people who came to cut down the trees. They're all, and they're all related. So,
And the name?
yeah, I'm gonna have to work on that.
How many trees did they cut down?
So there were about 7 trees. At the first go, there were another 7 that were taken down. And there was a local, that was, I mean, they, right, okay.
Those were inner riparian?
All outer.
Hmm?
It's all outer riparian.
Everything's all that, okay.
There was one more component to this. They did obtain a shed permit from building without knowing it was in the riverfront area. So they have a shed permit, and I've asked them not to install the shed until after we finish.
Needs to be thrown on the notice of intent as well.
Great. That's what okay.
Yes, that should all, and so any hardscape, anything that you're still planning on doing, that all needs to be put onto that notice of intent. So make sure the engineer knows he's doing like an encompassing notice for this, okay?
Yeah, so this Champion Tree did the tree service, and then the Sun has a landscaping company, so I would have to get the Sun's name.
That's about right. Okay, all right, well, thank you for
I don't know if you
letting
know.
us know about
Okay.
that.
Louise Landscaping, 3 L's Landscaping.
What is it?
He calls it 3 L's Landscaping. Louise was the son.
3 L's Landscaping?
Let's see, 3 L's Landscaping, yeah. 774-306-6864.
I just wrote down 3 L's Landscaping.
Brazilian crew, they're right down the street, so.
All right, so unless there's any.
I have a question.
Yep.
Yep, I just want to make sure I understand that. So all this work was done without a permit, okay?
All the hardscaping work
Yeah,
was,
so it's always really interesting to me, as long as I've been on this board, that folks come in and say they have a lot of experience doing this kind of work, but you don't have any experience with getting a permit.
That's right, shame, so, and shame on me for that, right?
Well, and
So-
to me,
so-
the problem it poses is that it has an appearance of trying to get away with it.
Okay.
And that message goes out to the community, and other folks who are so inclined say, well, maybe I can get away with this. So it kind of feeds into this problem that we deal with all the time. So I'm sorry this happened, and I'm hoping that you go back and rectify it in the proper way.
So,
Thank you.
right, and so it all starts with a little here and a little there, and it grew, so unfortunately, it's because my wife and I are doing 90% of this work, right? We do all this work on the place.
I'm sure.
And we just kind of keep going at it. Unfortunately, this kind of grew at a point where I was traveling a lot, and I said, just go ahead and do it. And and the other thing was, at what point, it was a little bit unclear. I know this is probably more than most people get into. At what point do we say, you know, if we're putting up a wall or putting up some hardscaping, that when it exceeds 6 feet in length and 2 feet high, do we then go and get a permit? So,
You live in a fragile area.
yeah.
So you know you have to do that.
And for conservation, the answer is always, when you're in a resource area or a buffer to the resource area, you always get a permit from conservation for that. It doesn't matter the size or the type or what kind of wall it is, you always get a permit from conservation. You may not necessarily need to get a building permit, but if you're gonna put something that's hardscape, that's gonna alter the land, or alter the resource, or alter the buffer, you get a permit from conservation. There's there's no reason why you shouldn't be getting at least contacting conservation and asking before you do it. Okay. All right. Would somebody like, unless there's any further questions, would somebody like to make a motion to issue the enforcement order as written?
So moved. David?
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
David, did you ask if there's anyone in the audience that had anything to say?
No, because it's in the enforcement order.
Tomorrow,
So we get into all sorts
for
of.
engineers. Yeah, I can send you an email, or you can stop by tomorrow.
Who are all these people out here?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your show of support. That was great. Thanks for showing support.
He made the assumption at the beginning, he thanked everybody for support of his neighbor. There's no support from his neighbor.
Are we still here?
Nope, we're all done.
Yeah,
We're all
we're
done.
gonna-
Okay, yeah, you're all done. Okay, next order of business, we're moving on to other business. And hopefully, we are moving on to the approval of meeting minutes for January 4th, 2023, and February 16th, 2023.
I believe there's also February 2nd for 2003.
February 2nd was already approved.
We did February 2nd?
Yeah, we can't do that one anyhow. But anyhow, so January 4th, did somebody read those?
I
And do we
read,
have the-
well,
Do we have the quorum for that?
We
one?
do.
I was not there January 4th,
Rick,
so.
Rick, me, Pat,
And Paul.
and Paul, right?
Yep, that was the 4.
Oh, yeah, yes,
So-
correct.
Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes for January 4th, 2023?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
No, I can't.
Yeah, you
Nope.
can. Hold on. Pat, would you like to second that,
Yes,
please?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. And then for February 16th, 2023, I think we were all here for that one.
I read that, that's fine.
All good? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes for February 16th, 2023?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. All those in favor?
Aye.
Were you here?
I wasn't here.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay.
Right. Thank you. Let's see, all those opposed? Carries unanimously, 5 to
5 to 0.
5-0.
Yeah, got it.
All right, then finally, any other business not reasonably anticipated?
Yes, I have an announcement. Mark your calendars. Annual Cleanup Day, Yarmouth, Earth Day, this year, April 22nd. I'll send you all an email with the flyer.
We'll partner with that.
What?
We'll partner with you on that.
Yeah,
It's Thursday, April
Thursday.
22nd?
Saturday.
Oh, Saturday?
It's Saturday.
Saturday.
I said Earth Day.
April 22nd.
Saturday, April 22nd. Yes.
We'll have to talk, we should
April
talk about that.
22nd.
Okay. I'll send more info. That is all. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Anybody else?
Get a chance to say
No,
anything.
Somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 7:11.